Hey fellas, it's Blobby. I'm back at it again. It's another video. I hope you're all doing well. Today, we're going to be starting the Nickelodeon Iceberg. You know, it's going to be a little different than the last Iceberg we did, where that one was more disturbing. This one's less disturbing in my opinion. It's kind of just general obscure topics that are around Nick, such as, you know, canceled shows, deleted scenes, controversial episodes, stuff like that. Growing up for me, I watched a whole bunch of Nick as a kid, a lot of other cartoon channels as well, but Nick is always going to be something I hold close to my heart, especially because of SpongeBob, and you know, now all they show is fucking SpongeBob. I like the old SpongeBob, honestly, a lot more than the newer one, but I haven't really watched SpongeBob for like the past 3 years. Maybe I'm tripping, maybe it's better than I think it is. Like most icebergs, if you haven't seen any in the past, the very top of the iceberg, which are going to be the least obscure or, you know, the most well-known things, which is basically what we're going to cover in this video. But as we go along, it'll become more obscure, lesser known, and maybe we'll even see here and there some things that are a little bit spooky or something like that. I did read through and saw a couple entries that I thought were pretty interesting, so I'm looking forward to cover those. But today we gotta go through kind of the most basic of the stuff. I'd like to say before we get started, I'm not going to do like the transitions like I did for the other iceberg chart, just because it wouldn't make a lot of sense and it would take much too much time. I will have transitions in between tiers of the iceberg, like the one you just saw, but just between subjects, because some of them are really like slim and short, it would not make a lot of sense, you know, to have like a cool transition and then I say 5 words and then we're on to the next thing, another transition. Just not really worth the time and effort to put into it. I might later on in the chart, as we go on, when there's less entries and they have more depth to them, so I have more to work with. But for a lot of these ones where it'll be maybe like 10 seconds of me explaining what it is before we go on to the next one, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to have a transition. So, starting us off is Nicktoons Unite, which is a 2005 video game available on stations like the PS2, the GameCube, the Nintendo DS, and the Game Boy Advance. It had characters from SpongeBob, Danny Phantom, The Fairly Odd Parents, and The Adventures of Jimmy Neutron. I had never played this game, and I hadn't really heard much about it. When I was a kid, the only like Nick game I played was like this. It was like a SpongeBob game where the controller was SpongeBob's face and the joystick was like his nose. But this one was also not very well received generally, but it did spawn a whole bunch of other games following its release. Different channels. This was one of the ones where I'm going to be pretty brief with because it's exactly what the title says. Nick had a plethora of channels. Each channel, it had, you know, different types of content on it, ranging for shows for like early pre-K and young children like that, all the way to young adults or people just starting adulthood to be interested in. They had 2 other channels that were Nicktoons, which was just mixes of cartoon and live action shows, which fits into the plethora of all of the audiences that they like, and Nick Music, which was a channel where you would pay to hear the music from young pop artists. Snick, which was Saturday night Nickelodeon. It was a 2-hour block from 8 to 10 p.m. and it eventually had turned into the Saturday night version of just Teen Nick. It contained shows like Clarissa Explains It All and The Ren and Stimpy Show, along with Are You Afraid of the Dark? When I was younger, I was a big fan of Are You Afraid of the Dark and Goosebumps. Are You Afraid of the Dark aired before I was born, though, which kind of tells you how fucking young I am. But I would go back and watch the show, and I really liked it. I think it was a great show. I think they're rebooting it right now. I haven't looked at that too much. But Are You Afraid of the Dark was definitely one of my favorite shows as a kid. I think shows like that and Goosebumps got me into really enjoying like horror and more scary stuff as I grew up. So, you know, that's pretty cool. The Kids' Choice Awards. It was an award show created by Nickelodeon. I'm going to be pretty brief because there's not too much to be said about it, as it is such a big thing nowadays. It began in 1988. It featured celebrity guests like the Jonas Brothers, Adam Sandler, and Whoopi Goldberg. Pretty obvious. Kids vote on who they like the most, and to get them an award. And the award is a blimp figurine. Nick at Night. It's exactly what the name is. It's just Nick at Night, but it's primarily, I guess, for adults and teenagers, because that's who's going to be up at those later times in the evening. Green slime. I'm going to go kind of in depth just because I guess I didn't really know where it originated from. Apparently it originated from You Can't Do That on Television, which was like a Canadian show that merged in with Nickelodeon into the US after, I think it lost popularity in Canada. And then eventually it kind of showed up and doubled there, and the Kids' Choice Awards, and from then on it kind of became a staple of the Nickelodeon the whole Nickelodeon thing. When you think Nickelodeon, you think of the orange blimp, the orange text, and the green slime. Paramount Plus is just a subscription-based on-demand streaming service. You can watch a lot of Nick shows on it. I don't know, there's not really much else to be said about it though. Worldwide Day of Play. It was an annual event designed to encourage children and parents to play outside and get off electronics and stuff. So this entry is over-reliance on SpongeBob. We all know that Nickelodeon kind of relies on SpongeBob for its main source of income. It's one of the primary cartoons that is played on Nick, and it seems to be the only one that they actually care about. The problem with that is because they rely so heavily on SpongeBob, they don't really have a lot of chances to have another really good cartoon, one that's just as good and entertaining to watch as SpongeBob, and it can also last a long time, because they've decided to kind of pour all their assets into SpongeBob, because it is that household name. It does rake in the cash, but it is disappointing that Nick solely has that, especially since they're literally just milking SpongeBob so hard over such a long period of time. The show's been going on for maybe 20 years now. I remember it was a big thing when I was young. It's still a big thing today, but it's just very disappointing that it's kind of, I guess, degraded over time into being solely just for them to profit off of it. Acquired shows. Nick has acquired a whole bunch of shows over its years of streaming. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the notable ones are like Paw Patrol and Peppa Pig. Nick movies. There's not much to be said about this one. It's just movies made by Nick. I can't really go deeper than that because it doesn't really seem to be much deeper than that. Oh Yeah Cartoons. It was an animation showcase on Nick. It was run by the former creative director of MTV and the president of Hanna-Barbera. It actually helped to create classics such as The Fairly OddParents and My Life as a Teenage Robot, but eventually it would obviously disappear like a lot of those older shows on Nick. But I still think it was pretty interesting. I never knew that The Fairly OddParents was born from like a showcase already on Nick. I think that's pretty interesting. Maybe that was a well-known thing and I just don't know about it. Stick Stickly. It was a popsicle stick with googly eyes and a jelly bean nose with a tiny mouth. It was the host of Nick in the Afternoon. Moose and Z was a bird and moose that hosted the Noggin channel. The moose would teach children things between shows. It would kind of act as like a teacher. And Z was the bird, and it would kind of act like a young preschool audience when it would, just uses motions to display what it's thinking. The Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, I believe, is the most recent game from Nick. It's a fighting platformer game, kind of similar to like Smash Bros. I haven't played it, but it features characters from Danny Phantom, SpongeBob, Avatar, Invader Zim, and a whole bunch of others. That concludes the first tier of the iceberg. Pretty basic stuff, like I said, but it is kind of expected that the very top tier of the iceberg will have the most well-known things, or just things that aren't really that interesting. But hopefully, now that we'll dive a step below the surface, we'll see a little bit more interesting things. So starting off, our first entry into the second tier of the iceberg is the NFL F-bomb. This occurred during the Bears versus Saint game on Nick, and it was between one of the players dropping the F-bomb after getting a penalty. It's kind of funny to watch, actually. Next is exclusive Netflix content. This one's just Netflix original shows that's, really only on Netflix, such as Glitch Text, Invader Zim and Enter the Florpus, Pinky Malinky, and Rocco's Modern Life Static Cling. I actually really liked Invader Zim when I was younger, so I'm going to have to check out the new TV series. It's probably not that new, but relatively new since when I watched the show last. DreamWorks shows. DreamWorks, they make TV shows and not just movies. Not really much else to be said about it. Nick Resort it's a resort created by Nick. I watched a video a couple months ago by Defunct Land. It's a really great video that covers the Nick Resort / hotel and their controversies. I'll probably link it down below if you want to check it out. Nickelodeon Studios, Orlando, Florida. It was the largest production studio in Florida at that time. At the time it was up in manufacturing. It produced 2,000 episodes of original programming, and it hosted some of the classic Nickelodeon game shows like Double Dare and Think Fast. It was more after a long period of time, it became more or less like a tourist attraction rather than just being a studio, and it raked in plenty of money until they had a $2 billion expansion. But then by then they had decided to open 2 new studios in California, so they just shut down the one in Florida. Crash Nebula was pitched as a TV show idea from Butch Hartman in 2004. It was seen and talked about in The Fairly Odd Parents, and even had a full episode of it in season 5, episode 21. It was supposed to air as a pilot, but it was never seen again because it received disappointing focus testing results. And it will most likely never be seen again because Butch Hartman's departure from Nick. Crossovers. Nickelodeon has had plenty of crossovers between various series. An example of that is Rugrats Go Wild, where the Rugrats and Wild Thornberrys meet after the Rugrats and their parents are stranded on a desert island. There's plenty of other examples, but not really anything that needs to be talked about. Bye Bye Beaver. It was an unaired episode of Angry Beavers. The episode began with Nobert receiving a letter that says he's over. Throughout the episode, the characters are trying to come to terms with being canceled after they understand that they're not real. And then unable to accept their fate, Dag tries to bribe, beg, and threaten the quote-unquote cartoon being over guys behinders. But in the end, both the characters say April Fools at the camera and laugh about it. The episode never aired because it broke 2 of Nickelodeon's rules, which apparently are a thing, which is acknowledging that it's the last episode of the show and breaking the 4th wall, even though the breaking the 4th wall one doesn't make as much sense because Ren and Stimpy had done it plenty of times in the past. But apparently they had tried to make that episode in order to cancel the show, according to an interview with one of the I think lead creators or writers on the show. Sold Doug. This is just talking about how Nick sold the TV show Doug because they were unable to put out episodes when they needed to, which led to the creators of Doug being bought by Disney. And then it was supposed to be kind of a monumental loss, but it wasn't as big as it could have been. because when Disney had bought them, they produced the last 12 episodes for the show and then tried to come out with a movie, but the movie made roughly $19.4 million in the box office off of the $5 million budget that went into the movie. And it was also nominated for a Stinker Award for the worst achievement in animation. The Adventure Time pilot. The pilot of Adventure Time aired in 2007. It was titled Adventure Time. It featured Jake and Penn, who was later named to who everyone knows now as Finn, on their adventure to save Princess Bubblegum from the Ice King. Nick Gas discontinuation. Nick Gas, or Nickelodeon Games and Sports for Kids, was a TV series which was a part of the MTV network. It aired from 1999 to 2007, consisted of game shows and sports-related programs, but it was discontinued after receiving low ratings and then replaced by a 24-hour version of the N. Hey Arnold, the Jungle Movie. Hey Arnold, the Jungle Movie aired in 2017 and was an expansion to Season 5's two-part episode called The Journal. The movie answered questions that weren't answered in the TV show, including the whereabouts of Arnold's missing parents. It was received extremely well, and even won an Emmy for Outstanding Individual Achievement in Animation. Congratulations, Hey Arnold. Can't Say Shut Up. So this one, I was kind of digging for it. I couldn't figure it out, but I think I found out what it was in the end after reading an article. In 1998, an episode of Angry Beavers had the protagonist, Nobert, yell, "Shut up, Dag." But after several angry parents complained to Nick, they ended up censoring the word shut. Yet it went from bad to worse when people assumed that he had said a curse word rather than just shut. And in the end, they changed the line to "shush up, stupid." I think it's pretty dumb that, I mean, unless your kids are like 4, but even then, censoring "shut up," really, man? Really? There's like actual cuss words, but shut up is where they draw the line. They want to get that off the air, buddy. Cube. Cube was a defunct experimental two-way multi-programmed cable television system. If you think that was a lot of words for someone like me to say, you must be forgetting that I'm quite the intelligent individual. And Wikipedia is also a thing. It introduced several features that were central to the future of TV, such as pay-per-view special interest cable television networks and interactive services. The downside of Cube was it ran at like a terrible loss of income, and then it ran into privacy concerns with people that ended up paying for the product. In the end, it led to the death of Cube. Deleted/censored scenes. Over the 44 years Nickelodeon's been around, it's pretty obvious that eventually they'll have some scenes that got deleted or censored. Whether it's because they want to shorten a film or like an episode of a show, or it contains something that parents complained about, or it just had something in it that it shouldn't have, such as the "shut up" line earlier. But I thought an interesting case of it was in Ren and Stimpy in the episode Powdered Toast Man after the original airing, a scene where the Powdered Toast Man burns the US Constitution and Bill of Rights. It got trimmed because parents didn't like that one very much. Sponge on the Run and Camp Coral controversies. So, Sponge on the Run was a movie that came out relatively recently. I saw a lot of memes for it, didn't end up watching it. But reading through, looking at articles and stuff in order to research for the controversies, because at first I wasn't really sure what it was. I'm still kind of unsure, so if anything I say here changes, like maybe someone who's commenting knows a little bit more than I do about what the controversy is, I'll probably, pin their comment or do something like that. I believe the controversy for the movie isn't it being bad. It's the fact that it kind of breaks the canon characters meeting in the show. And yeah, SpongeBob isn't like, there's a set beginning and a set ending, and the story goes through every episode, but there is a set meeting point for most of the characters that are introduced into the show. So when SpongeBob, I believe in the very first episode, Help Wanted, SpongeBob meets Mr. Krabs when applying for the fry cook job. He met Squidward because they were neighbors, and he also met Patrick for that reason. I think that actually Patrick and him went further back in the show when they were younger, but I could be wrong. I'm sorry, I'm not a fake SpongeBob fan. I just have really awful memory. He also met Sandy when she had just moved into Bikini Bottom in the episode Tea at the Tree Dome, which was a pretty iconically funny episode where SpongeBob is trying to figure out that he does need water to survive, but he wants to show off for Sandy and let her know that, you know, he's a strong little sponge man. But in the movie, they try to say that they had all met previously in a camp when they were all young children, which completely negates those 2 episodes that says that Sandy hasn't been here since she was like a young squirrel. Mr. Krabs hadn't just met SpongeBob when he was trying to get a job. So it does really mess with kind of the flow of the TV show by mixing and matching and changing things where they really want to. It's kind of annoying. I just think that overall it's really unfortunate that even after Steven Heilenberg died, Nick continues to drain SpongeBob for as much money as humanly possible, even going back and changing how he had originally had the story be. So I just think that's fucking lame. We've got Splinter's death in TMNT 2012 edition. In the 2012 edition of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Splinter is killed 2 times. Initially, he's murdered by regular Splinter and is brought back to life when the Turtles go back in time to save the Earth. And then after that, he is killed a second time by Super Shredder, and he's buried in the O'Neill farmhouse, where his spirit watches over his family from heaven. When this show was on TV and it was still airing, I love this show. I still like it a lot. But when Splinter died, Little Blob Man hurt. Little Blob Boy would actually be better. Well, I'm technically still a Blob Boy. I'm more like a Blob Teen at this point, but Little Man, I was hurt so bad. I was so sad over that. I still think it sucks that they killed Splinter, but I guess eventually it had to happen. L is for Love. L is for Love is the 23rd episode of the 2nd season of The Loud House. This episode is also banned in a ton of places, such as in Eastern Central Europe, Turkey, Poland, Indonesia, and Malaysia. The episode was banned because of Luna and Sam's relationship in the episode. Most of the episode, to sum it up pretty quickly, it's like a kind of a red herring little hunt to figure out who is the recipient of love letters that the family's receiving. In the end, they mixed up who actually was supposed to receive the letters. While they thought it was Luna and the person sending the letters was Sam, it actually was meant for Lynn Sr., and the admirer was Rita. The story that Rita tells is she couldn't find the courage all those years ago to ask him out, but she finally found it now and decided that it was never too late, to send the letters and just, try her best. Luna found the courage in that story and decided to express her love to Sam, who ends up being another female, which we find out at the end of the episode. Unfortunately, that is the reason that the episode was banned, because it is a same-sex relationship, which I do think is pretty childish that they would ban something like that just because it's a same-sex relationship. It's very stupid, in my opinion. I don't think that's really necessary, especially since it isn't like the entire episode's about that. It is closer towards the end. But even then, I don't know why it would make a difference if it was the whole episode or just the last couple minutes. It shouldn't really be banned for something like that happens every day. Nick Box. The Nick Box was a delivery of SpongeBob SquarePants merchandise that happens 4 times a year. And each box is filled with exclusive apparel and items. And it's, all exclusive to the Nick Box itself. You can't get these elsewhere. The Super Bowl 2019 incident. I looked for a while. Not really sure. I know that there is like an incident, but nothing that really has to do with Nickelodeon. The only thing I can think is how they were showing SpongeBob in the episode where they prepared to perform Sweet Victory in the Bubble Bowl, and then they cut after 5 seconds, but that would have to be it. Like, people being disappointed because this was so close after Steven Hillenburg's death, and he didn't get as much recognition as he deserved. But I can't really think of anything else that it could be. The last thing in this tier is DNA Productions. DNA Productions was an animation studio that was defunct in 2006. It worked on shows such as The Weird Al Show and The Adventures of Jimmy Neutron. But due to little success outside of Jimmy Neutron, the company went bankrupt and was eventually absorbed by Omation Animation Studio. That concludes the second tier of the iceberg, which also concludes this video. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. I know I rambled a bit at certain points, but I'm trying to get into the groove of, I guess I write scripts for these, but I also wanted to kind of express some personality as well, rather than just reading what I wrote down. So I end up kind of stuttering and rambling at times. Hopefully the more I do this, the better I'll get at just expressing what I think without sounding like a complete fucking idiot. If you guys enjoyed this video, I'm going to try to get the second part out as soon as possible. But feel free to like, subscribe, comment if you really want to. Maybe you saw something that I missed, or maybe you understood something more than I did. Feel free to let me know down in the comments below. But yeah, I love you all, and I'll see you very soon.